started 30 years ago with the goal to make data storage simple. Today, US-based technology player NetApp has achieved success. Be it cloud, data, or storage infrastructure, NetApp has been helping companies automate applications by making the cloud simple. From automotive to electronics, life sciences, gaming, financial services, manufacturing, media, and oil and gas, NetApp helps organizations across industries store data and use the same to develop and update products and services. NetApp CEO George Kurian says the company has a strong presence in India and is looking to double its revenue. He adds India has the potential to become NetApp's largest market in Asia over the next 5 years.
Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shereen Bhan, and joining me now on the program is the Global CEO of NetApp, George Kurian. George, many thanks for joining us bright and early here in Delhi. Welcome to India.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start by talking about India. NetApp itself is about 30 years old. You've been in India for 22, I think, of the 30. And it's a fairly large business for you. About 30% of your employee base is here.
That's right. That's right. We started as a development center. We now have in Bangalore a large campus which has all of the functions in the company and is the largest single location for us. And of course, India is a very important market for us as well. We serve both global companies that have large presences in India as well as all the leaders in the Indian market.
Okay, so let's talk about the strength of the Indian market and what you potentially see over the next few years in terms of new opportunities as well as building on the existing business.
We serve the largest institutions in India, the largest public bank, the largest private bank, the top 3 telecom operators. We operate in the public sector where we serve 22 state and of course 20 of the largest departments of the federal government here, national government. And we are growing our business in the small and medium-sized part of the market, especially with our cloud technology. We can serve the huge startup ecosystem in India.
I'll get to the startup ecosystem in just a second, but let's talk about the SMB space, because that's a space that everyone, every cloud service provider is hoping to get a bigger pie of. What is going to be the differentiator? What is going to be the USP? How do you go after that market? What are you going to be leveraging?
We have relationships with the largest cloud providers in the world. We're uniquely positioned with award-winning partnerships with Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. And what we allow them to do is to deploy high-performance applications on their public clouds. And those partnerships have been very successful for us in other parts of the world in bringing on new clients, much smaller companies than we've typically served, in a very efficient way, and we think we can bring the same ideas to the Indian market.
So what's the aspiration? What's the target that you've set for your team here in India in terms of chasing the SMB market?
Well, we've doubled the business over the last 2 years in India, which has been really great. We want to see it double again.
What would the revenue contribution be?
We just want to double the business again in the next couple of years.
How large is the India business today?
It is one of the top 4 countries in the Asian market for us, which Asia is about 20% of our global business. We want to grow it to being perhaps the largest market in Asia. It has the potential to do that.
By when?
Us.
The largest market in Asia by when?
Probably 5 years.
Okay, 5 years on. Let's talk a little bit about the global environment, and especially as far as cloud is concerned, because while you have guided for a strong EPS growth in FY24, and you believe the second half is going to deliver for you, what's the sense that you get? How much are the macros weighing on discretionary spending, on client spending and client addition at this point in time?
I think the macro is certainly a factor in terms of technology spending and business spending of all types, especially capital investment. I think we want to be parts of the priority spending areas in our clients. Increasingly, we see that advanced uses of data to deliver better patient outcomes in healthcare, manufacture much more efficiently and cheaply, kind of deliver new types of digitized services is an area that all clients around the world are prioritizing, and we've got good solutions for that. In the cloud space, we saw a period of optimization after a couple of years during the COVID pandemic,
which was
absolutely
just
boom, right? And I think that optimization phase is coming to its end. It's not finished yet, but I think it's slowed down the pace of optimization. So it's starting to reach stability from which we'll start to see growth.
So what would that mean then in terms of revenue growth over the next few years? Because you have guided for sort of mid-single digits at this point in time, but what are the big risk factors that you see that could perhaps derail the projections and the forecasts that you have?
The second half of this year, our plan is to grow year on year, and I think we expect to do that regardless of the macro environment. We think we have great technology. We've got, momentum in a lot of our large markets, and the pace of customer acquisition that we've demonstrated for the last couple of quarters leads us to have a good outlook. I think that the wildcards are the same as for everybody else, which is...
So what are the key wildcards that you're worried about today?
I think, clearly some parts of Europe are in recession. I think Germany recently announced that they are in recession. I think the geopolitical environment, if it spreads beyond the situation in Russia to anything involving China would complicate things. And then I think that the impact of the interest rates landscape, so far, at least in North America, it's been sort of predicted to be a soft landing. If it is a hard landing, then it would really compromise how people operate their businesses.
But is that, the indication that you get, especially from America? Because while we have seen rates move up and move up significantly, but the job market continues to be tight and the underlying economic resilience still strong.
You're exactly right. So far, everything's good. At least we're hopeful for a soft landing in the United States, but you never know with these things.
In terms of the tech landscape, and today, product life cycles have shrunk so significantly, and just about every tech CEO that I speak to has told me that they've never seen anything quite like this in their 20, 30 years of being in the tech business. I want to put the same question to you. I mean, how is it different this time around, if it is?
I think the last few years have certainly been an accelerated pace of disruption. First was, of course, the COVID pandemic, which in many cases was unprecedented, both in terms of its global scope as well as the accelerated pace of the impact. And then recovering from that was the supply chain crisis, where you saw this huge spike in demand, but a captive silicon supply chain that could not meet it. And so those were two excruciating periods that you had to manage the business through. I think what we're seeing now is more of a continuous kind of being ready and agile for the continuous set of changes. There's, of course, the ongoing trends toward digitization, the move towards, artificial intelligence or various forms of, sort of computer-aided intelligence that you got to be ready for, and just keeping business organizations nimble and agile so that you can respond and keep moving. You can't respond to every trend. You got to pick the ones that you're going to respond to.
Exactly. So which are the trends that you're picking or prioritizing at this point in time that you want to double down your bets on?
We predicted very early on about cloud, and I think that has been really successful for us. We still are the only enterprise storage company in the world that has our technology natively integrated into all the leading public clouds. We see the next decade as a decade of data, cloud, and AI, and we want to position NetApp to be at the center of that, and we've done a good job so far.
So on the AI side, and that is the current sort of big disruptive wave that everyone is talking about and trying to zero in on how they can sort of benefit from it or how they can be part of it. What is that going to mean as far as NetApp is concerned specifically? How are you looking at this big AI transition and transformation?
We see three things that we need to do to lead in this next era. First is we've used AI to help our products and services be much better. It's deeply integrated into our technology to help make it really easy for customers to operate their environments. There's ongoing advancements of that. The second is to capture the evolving, customer use cases for AI. We've had many years of success with players like NVIDIA around what they call predictive AI, where people use data and artificial intelligence to predict an answer.
But now it's
generative. It's generative,
yeah.
And we're particularly well suited for that because it's really good at solving business problems using files and images and things like that we are the world leader at. And then the third is using AI to make our business more productive. And there we've got significant opportunities in software development, in customer service, in our marketing and content creation and all of those things. So those are the three.
Let me pick up on this productivity issue. And I think one of the big concerns or one of the big fears today is what is this going to mean, not just for the jobs of today, but also in terms of the jobs of the future. On account of some of the excruciating pains that you spoke of, we've seen many companies having to resort to laying off people, including NetApp. You've had to let go of about 8% of your workforce globally. What is this move towards more AI, specifically now generative AI, going to do in terms of manpower and the way that you allocate human resources?
I think it depends on which part of the world you're in. I think in many parts of the developed world, there's really an aging population. And so to be able to support that aging population with a much smaller workforce in the social security system, you will really need significant enhancements in productivity that AI is one of the ways to accomplish. I think if you look in some of the more emerging type parts of the world, it really is an opportunity maybe to leapfrog and to sort of get ahead, take advantage of some of the new capabilities so that you don't have to go through the learning curve that the developed world has. My own view is actually that AI will be a tool like all the other tools to make mankind smarter, better, more productive. And I think
are the fears exaggerated, you think? Or some of the fears warranted and some exaggerated?
I think you're right about the latter. Some are warranted, some are exaggerated. I think the thing that we work on is to make it as much as possible a level playing field. You don't want one part of the world to have AI tools and another not to.
Or one company to have AI tools and not the others.
Exactly.
How much of that is the big concern, and what do you believe this move towards regulation, and countries are talking about regulation, companies are talking about regulation, what do you believe should be the appropriate mix of what you regulate, who regulates, how much you regulate, how harmonized regulation can and should be?
I think with regard to the core AI technology itself, it really depends on sort of how fast it gets to be good enough, right? If it's a very long period of time where there is significant advantages to one or very few models being much better than everything else, then you really have the concern of the industry structure being dominated by a few players. If, on the other hand, models get good enough quite quickly, which we are seeing some evidence of, then I think that you could have much more of an open ecosystem. And what really becomes then most important is having the right data and using it to get insights and productivity in your business.
Speaking about an open ecosystem, and here in India, the move towards building on the digital public infrastructure has really seen the advent of things like the UPI and Aadhaar sort of building itself out and so on and so forth. How do you look at that, and what do you believe are the lessons to be learned from that? Are you enthused by the kind of progress that's been made using DPI?
We're fortunate to be a part of many elements of the payment infrastructure in India, and we are amazed at how the country has brought digital capability to so many of its citizens, right? And I think that that's a model certainly for not only the developing countries in the world, but even the developed countries in the world, as we think about national health care or various other topics in different parts of the world.
What excites you about that?
I think it's really using, sort of massively scaled technology and data, but making it accessible to every citizen in India, and allowing all of the citizens to be able to access the capabilities that in many other parts of the world, only the richest or the most sophisticated people can have. And that's fantastic.
You're watching the Global Dialogue. We're in conversation with the global CEO of NetApp. We're going to take a quick break and come back to you in just a moment. And we're talking about India and the road ahead. I want to understand from you, how do you look at the startup ecosystem in India, in terms of partnerships, collaborations, possible acquisitions as well? I mean, you've done a slew of acquisitions. I think it's about 22, if I'm correct. So is that potentially an area that you will look at in the future here in India?
Certainly, India, Israel, and the US are our largest development centers. There's amazing, technical capabilities, business creation capabilities here. We have been supporting what we call an accelerator program with no strings attached. It's just out of the, wanting to be able to. No, there are no strings actually in our program. We've had it since 2017. We've brought 72 companies through the program. And we do that not because we want to acquire them or because they are required to use any of our technology. We do that to give back to the startup ecosystem of which we were once a part. We do that because it helps us learn from them about all the challenges that smaller businesses have. And conversely, it also helps our employees learn to teach and mentor. We've been proud, especially of the fact that we've had a significant number of women-led startups, and in the next cohort, almost all of the startups that are in the program that will be starting up shortly will be female-led.
That is wonderful to hear, because that's not a usual story, and especially not as far as technology is concerned. Is that conscious? Was that deliberate? How did that come about?
It's part of our values, and part of it has been to work extra hard to bring people in, and our female employees have been a big part of that, and I'm excited to see that come to life.
You talked about agility and nimbleness and the ability to sort of move between trends and bring in a sense of dynamism into decision making. How has it changed for you as a leader over the years? I mean, what have you had to unpack in your own style, in your own approach to the way that you ran the business, 5 years ago versus today?
I think the most important is to build strong teams, move decision-making closer to the front lines so that, you can get local market intelligence and move at speed. I think COVID taught us an incredibly large number of lessons. I think early in the COVID pandemic, one of the things that we needed to do was to allow different parts of the world to operate differently because we had to comply with different health regulations.
Yeah.
And so we took all approval authority and moved it down 2 or 3 levels to allow, more of our team to make decisions. And
but does it still, is it now there? Has it changed permanently?
We've kept it down there for the most part, yep. So that, because we saw good decisions being made, and it allowed us to respond really quickly to what was needed in different parts of the world.
So that's an interesting aspect because, while a lot of people talk about this aspect of what is called as globalization, sort of, operating at a global level, but also localizing your offering to suit the needs of your customers in a specific market. What's been the challenge of being able to do that? What has been the success of being able to do that, especially here in a market like India?
I think you've got to keep the right balance of having things that scale, because those bring economic benefits, but also not keeping it so monolithic that it doesn't feel like it's a local offering. So we work with different partners around the world. We work with different ecosystems around the world. And the second thing that from an executive decision-making capabilities, you've got to teach the team to not go for every trend. You've got to be wise in which trends you pick. And we've been fortunate that we've made good decisions on that.
So what is the aspiration now? A 30-year history behind you, a slew of partnerships. You have, as you said, decided to focus on 3 key trends. What's the aspiration? What's the 5-year roadmap? We talked about what's happening over the next few quarters, but what's the 5-year aspiration for you?
We'd like to grow the business, in double digits every year. And, at some point we want to hit 10 billion in revenue. I think an increasing part of that becomes software and cloud services. So if you've seen our business model, we've improved operating margins dramatically over the last few years as we've shifted the business much more towards software and cloud services. And so that's really the goal.
Is there potential to do that even more? Because you have seen a significant improvement on your gross margins already. And large part of that is because of the kind of cost controls that you've been able to bring in. Is there room to be able to do better on this?
I think the business mix will continue to shift towards more software and sort of higher margin products as customers want those much more efficient environments in their infrastructures. And so there's a natural cadence at which it goes. You're always trying to balance how much growth you want to drive and how much margins you want to deliver. And so that's an ongoing, balance.
Yes, the pulls and pressures that you have to deal with every quarter. But I also want to ask you about what we're seeing happen globally at this point in time with, countries moving towards now setting up their own chip manufacturing, whether it's in the US or here in India. You talked about the excruciating pain of supply chain disruptions that we saw specifically on the chip side through COVID. How do you read these changes and the implications and the impact they could potentially have?
I think they've, impacted 2 large trends that were quite common for many years. One was to run your business with as lean inventory as possible. Those rules are out. And the second was to centralize all of your manufacturing so that you could bring the entire system together in one location. I think both those rules have, moved on. I think the third thing that we've done in our technology design is to make our systems look much more like Lego blocks.
Okay.
So that you can, if you're short of one piece of technology, you can get another one and slot it in and keep your system moving. I think by using industry standard technology, that's been one of our claims to fame. We use the world's most standard technologies, but use our software to make them highly differentiated. We're able to access and build flexible supply chains in different parts of the world.
That is interesting. And do you see more companies now being forced in a way to move to that?
I think certainly after COVID, we've seen, I'm part of several CEO roundtables, in North America, there's certainly a much more deeper understanding of the implications of manufacturing, supply chain, sourcing than they used to be. And so I think there's more people thinking exactly along the lines of what I shared.
So outside of manufacturing, supply chain and sourcing, what else are the CEOs on the tech roundtable talking about today? Is it the Musk versus Zuckerberg battle? What is occupying mind space?
I think there's always the new opportunities. I think AI is certainly an important part of that. And I also think that everyone's concerned about an increasingly bi- or tripolar world, which would not be healthy for any major accomplishment that the world needs to get to, whether it's climate change, whether it's building global business systems that are integrated, whether it is trying to harmonize regulations. That's probably one of the biggest concerns that all tech leaders worry about.
I'm going to take a break from business and talk to you about something which I find absolutely fascinating. I don't know how many people know, but he has a twin brother who is also in the tech business and runs Google Cloud. I mean, how often do people confuse the two of you?
Quite often, actually. Yeah. On my flight here.
Do you pretend that, do you pretend to be either? Do you have like a way that you sort of deal with this?
I'm usually honest and just say, listen, I'm not Thomas, but I'm his twin, and most people are astonished about that. Yeah.
Wait, so growing up, what was that like? I mean, how much of it was just both of you feeding off of each other's interests and passions and then landing up in pretty much sort of similar situations?
I think it was more circumstance than design that got us to being where we are. I think we were fortunate to have amazing parents, amazing brothers, teachers that kind of helped and mentored us. And I think that's been the biggest part of the blessings we've received in our lives.
Well, before I let you go, you're here in India. You're going to be visiting Bombay, Bengaluru, Mumbai and Bengaluru as well, as you take stock of your operations here. You talked about significant growth opportunities here in India, but if there's like the single mandate that you're going to be setting for the India team, what is it going to be?
Win new customers and grow our business in the areas that customers are looking to accelerate their business success. Data, cloud, and AI.
Data, cloud, and AI. George, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Global Dialogue. Appreciate your time, and we wish you the very best of luck with your trip here in India.
Thank you so much.
That's it on this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, goodbye, and many thanks for watching.